"Get out of my house! You're nothing but a relic of my past!" Marcus screamed, throwing his wife's suitcase down the marble stairs. He thought he was the king of the world, a self-made millionaire with a new supermodel girlfriend and the biggest mansion in the state. He thought his quiet, bookish wife, Ellie, was just a charity case he had outgrown. But Marcus made a fatal calculation. He didn't read the fine print on the land deed. He didn't know that the ground he stood on, the walls he bragged about, and the very driveway he was kicking her onto, didn't belong to him. They belonged to her. And by the time he found out, it would be too late to run. Thunder rattled the oversized pane-glass windows of the master study, but the atmosphere inside the room was far more volatile than the storm brewing over the Hamptons. Marcus Vance stood by the fireplace, swirling a glass of 50-year-old Macallan Scotch. He checked his reflection in the mirror above the mantel. At 42, he looked every inch the tech mogul he was. Sharp jawline, bespoke Armani suit, and a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most people's college tuition. He was the picture of new money success. He had clawed his way up from a garage startup to the CEO of Vantage Systems, and he wore his wealth like armor. Sitting across from him, on a plush leather armchair, was Eleanor. Ellie. She looked out of place in the room Marcus had designed to intimidate. She wore a simple beige cardigan and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose, messy bun. There were no diamonds on her neck, only a simple silver locket. She was holding a book, her finger marking the page, looking at her husband with a mixture of confusion and a deep, settling dread. "Did you hear me, Ellie?" Marcus asked, his voice deceptively calm. He didn't turn to face her. He preferred looking at himself in the mirror. "I heard you, Marcus," Ellie said softly. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly against the book cover. "You want a divorce?" "I don't just want a divorce," Marcus corrected, finally turning around. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth they had held 10 years ago when they met in a dusty university library. "I need a divorce. Look at you, Ellie. Look at this. Stagnation." He gestured vaguely at her, as if her mere existence was an insult to the modern decor. "We have grown apart," Ellie said, trying to be reasonable. "I know you've been busy with the IPO, and I prefer a quieter life, but we can work on it." Marcus laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Ellie, wake up. I am the cover of Forbes. I am meeting with senators and oil tycoons. And you? You're still acting like the librarian's assistant I felt sorry for a decade ago. You bake bread, you garden, you read." He spat the word read like it was a slur. "You don't fit the brand, Ellie. You're an anchor, and I'm a rocket ship." Ellie slowly closed her book. She placed it gently on the side table. "So 10 years of marriage, supporting you when Vantage Systems was nothing but a laptop and a pile of debt, nursing you through your ulcer scares. That makes me an anchor?" "I paid you back for that support," Marcus scoffed, walking over to his desk and picking up a thick manila envelope. He tossed it onto her lap. "I bought you clothes you never wear. I bought you jewelry that sits in a safe. And now I'm giving you a generous severance package." "Severance package?" Ellie whispered. "I'm your wife, Marcus, not an employee." "It's a check for $200,000, Marcus said, ignoring her hurt. "And the deed to that little cottage your aunt left you in Ohio. That's more than enough for a woman of your simple tastes." Ellie didn't touch the envelope. She looked up at him, her grey eyes darkening. "And the house? This estate?" Marcus smirked, spreading his arms wide. "The Vance Manor stays with the Vans, obviously. I bought this place. I paid for the renovations. I built the East Wing. This is my legacy." Ellie stood up slowly. She was shorter than him, but for a second she seemed to loom large in the dim light. Marcus, you need to be very careful about what you do next. You think you know everything about our finances, about this property. But you don't. Marcus rolled his eyes. Don't start with your cryptic nonsense. My lawyers drew up the prenup. Everything I acquired during the marriage is mine because you made zero financial contribution. You signed it, Ellie. Remember? I remember signing a document you put in front of me because I trusted you, Ellie said. But there are things about this land. Stop! Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. I am done listening to you. I have guests arriving in an hour. Important guests. I want you packed and gone before the first car pulls into the driveway. Gone? Ellie blinked. Tonight? In this storm? Call an Uber. Take the SUV to the gate. I don't care. Marcus sneered. Just get out. I have a life to live, and it starts the second you walk out that door. Ellie stared at him for a long, heavy silence. She saw the man she had loved, the man she had secretly protected from bankruptcy 3 times without him ever knowing, and saw that he was truly gone. In his place was a monster made of ego and greed. Okay, Ellie said quietly. I'll pack. Marcus looked surprised she gave in so easily. He expected screaming, crying, begging. Her calm unsettled him, but he brushed it off. She knows she's beaten, he thought. She knows she's nothing without me. Good, Marcus grunted, turning back to his scotch. Take only what you came with. I don't want you looting the place. Ellie walked to the door, her hand on the brass handle. She paused. I hope you enjoy the house, Marcus, while it lasts. She closed the door softly. Marcus chuckled, taking a sip of the amber liquid. While it lasts? It's going to last forever, darling. It's my kingdom. He checked his watch. Jessica would be here in 20 minutes. He needed to make sure the old debris was cleared out before the new centerpiece arrived. Ellie moved mechanically through the massive walk-in closet in the master bedroom. It was a space larger than her first apartment. On the left were Marcus's rows of Italian suits. On the right, her modest collection of dresses and sweaters. She pulled down a vintage leather suitcase, the same one she had brought with her when they moved here 5 years ago. She didn't pack the diamond earrings or the Cartier watch. She packed her wool sweaters, her worn-in jeans, 3 of her favorite first-edition novels, and a small, wooden jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother. She heard the roar of an engine outside. Not just any engine, the distinct, aggressive growl of a Porsche 911 GT3. Ellie walked to the window. The rain was lashing against the glass, blurring the world outside, but the headlights cut through the gloom. A bright yellow sports car screeched to a halt right in front of the fountain, a fountain Ellie had personally designed. The driver's door opened, and a long leg clad in a red-bottomed Christian Louboutin heel stepped into a puddle. It was Jessica Thorne. Ellie knew who she was. Everyone knew. Jessica was 24, an influencer and aspiring actress who had been clinging to Marcus's arm at charity galas for the past 6 months. Marcus claimed she was a brand ambassador for Vantage Systems. Ellie wasn't stupid. She just hadn't realized Marcus was bold enough to bring her here, to their home, before the divorce papers were even dry. The front door slammed downstairs. The sound of high heels clicking on the marble floor echoed up the grand staircase. Marcus, baby, it is absolutely pouring out there. Jessica's voice was high, shrill and demanding. I've got a towel, darling. Come here. Marcus's voice drifted up, dripping with an affection he hadn't shown Ellie in years. Ellie zipped up her suitcase. Her heart pounded, not with heartbreak, but with a cold, simmering anger. She grabbed the handle and walked out of the bedroom, reaching the top of the stairs just as Marcus and Jessica were embracing in the foyer. Jessica was wearing a skin-tight red dress that left little to the imagination. She was undeniably beautiful, in a manufactured, glossy way. She pulled back from Marcus and looked up, her eyes locking onto Ellie. A smirk curled on Jessica's red lips. She didn't look ashamed. She looked triumphant. "Oh," Jessica said, feigning surprise. "Is the help still here?" Marcus laughed. He actually laughed. "She's just leaving, Jess. Don't worry." Ellie descended the stairs, one step at a time. The heavy thud of her boots was the only sound in the cavernous hall. She stopped 3 steps from the bottom, looking down at them. "Hello, Jessica," Ellie said. "I see you didn't waste any time." Jessica tossed her blonde extensions over her shoulder. "Life moves fast, sweetie. You have to keep up or you get left behind. Marcus told me you were quaint. But seeing you in that sweater? You look like you're ready for a retirement home, not a mansion." "This house requires a lot of upkeep," Ellie said, her voice flat. "It respects history. It respects class, something neither of you seems to possess." Marcus's face turned red. "Watch your mouth, Ellie. You're a guest in my house now, a deeply unwelcome one." "Your house," Ellie repeated, a dry smile touching her lips. "You keep saying that." "Because it is," Marcus shouted, losing his temper. He marched over, grabbed Ellie's suitcase from her hand, and dragged it to the front door. He opened the heavy oak double doors, letting the wind and rain swirl into the pristine foyer. He threw the suitcase out. It landed with a wet thud on the driveway, soaking instantly in the torrential downpour. "Get out!" Marcus roared, pointing into the storm. "Take your trash and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of." Jessica giggled, clinging to Marcus's arm. "Yeah, go back to the library." Ellie walked to the open door. The cold wind whipped her hair across her face. She looked at the suitcase lying in the mud, then turned back to face the adulterous couple, bathed in the warm, golden light of the chandelier. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a set of keys, the keys to the Range Rover Marcus had bought for the family. She dropped them on the console table. "I'll call a taxi," Ellie said. "Don't bother waiting inside," Marcus sneered. "Wait on the porch. I don't want you dripping on the floors." Ellie stepped out into the rain. The water soaked her instantly, chilling her to the bone. She didn't run. She walked with her head high, picked up her heavy wet suitcase, and moved to the edge of the portico. Behind her, she heard the heavy doors slam shut, followed by the sound of the deadbolt sliding home. She was alone, homeless, soaking wet. Ellie pulled her phone from her pocket, shielding it from the rain. She didn't call a taxi. She dialed a number she hadn't used in 5 years. The line rang twice. "Sterling Residence, Arthur speaking." A crisp, elderly voice answered. "Arthur?" Ellie said, her voice cracking slightly before she steeled herself. "It's Eleanor." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "Miss Eleanor? My goodness. It has been years. Is everything all right?" "No, Arthur. It's time," Ellie said, wiping rain from her eyes. "Initiate the Sterling protocol and call the board of directors." "The protocol?" Arthur's voice dropped to a whisper. "Miss Eleanor, that will destroy him. That will take everything." Ellie looked back at the mansion. Through the window she could see Marcus pouring champagne for Jessica. They were toasting, celebrating her removal. "I know," Ellie said, her voice hardening into something cold and unbreakable. "He threw me out of my own house, Arthur. Now, I'm going to remind him who actually owns the ground he's standing on." "Very well," Arthur said, the sound of papers rustling in the background. "I will have the car there in 10 minutes. And Miss Eleanor?" "Yes? Welcome back." The taillights of the Rolls-Royce Phantom cut through the torrential rain like red lasers. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't an Uber. It was a custom-built, armored vehicle that cost more than Marcus's entire fleet of sports cars combined. The rear door swung open, held by a uniformed chauffeur who didn't seem to mind the storm soaking his livery. Ellie stepped inside, sinking into the hand-stitched leather seats. The warmth of the cabin enveloped her instantly. Sitting across from her, holding a thermos of tea and a heated towel, was Arthur Pendleton. He was 70 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen 3 generations of Sterling family secrets. He wasn't just a butler. He was the executor of the Sterling Trust, a legal entity that controlled vast swaths of Manhattan real estate, shipping lines in the Pacific, and, unbeknownst to Marcus Vance, the very ground his precious mansion stood on. "Here, Miss Eleanor," Arthur said gently, handing her the towel. "Dry yourself. You're shivering." Ellie wrapped the warm cloth around her face, inhaling the scent of lavender. When she lowered it, the tears were gone. Her eyes were dry and clear. "Did you bring the file?" "I did," Arthur said, tapping a black leather briefcase on the seat beside him. "Though I must admit, I never thought we would actually have to use it. I always hoped Mr. Vance would prove me wrong." "He didn't," Ellie said, her voice devoid of emotion. "He failed, Arthur. In every way a man can fail." The car glided silently down the winding road, passing the massive iron gates of the Vance Manor. Ellie didn't look back. "Take us to the penthouse," Ellie instructed, "and call the team. I want a forensic audit of Vantage systems, started by midnight. I want every penny I ever funneled into his company through the shell corporations identified and frozen." Arthur nodded, pulling out a tablet. "And regarding the Vance Manor?" Ellie allowed a small, cold smile to touch her lips. "Let's clarify something, Arthur. It's not the Vance Manor. It's Plot 44B of the Sterling Hamptons estate. Marcus thinks he bought that land 5 years ago." "He bought the rights to build," Arthur corrected, reciting the legal trap they had set years ago, a test of Marcus's character that he had unknowingly failed. "He signed a 99-year ground lease with Argos Land Management. He was so eager to start building his monument to himself that he didn't have his lawyers read the termination clauses." "Clause 17, Ellie said, reciting it from memory. "In the event of the lessee filing for divorce against the primary beneficiary of the Sterling Trust, or engaging in acts of moral turpitude on the premises, the ground lease is immediately revoked, and all structures upon said land revert to the ownership of the lessor." Arthur chuckled darkly. "He thinks he owns the house because he paid for the bricks and mortar. He forgets that in real estate, the person who owns the dirt owns the world." "He kicked me out into the rain, Arthur," Ellie whispered, looking out at the blurring lights of the highway. "He treated me like a vagrant, like I was nothing." "And tomorrow," Arthur said, typing a command that would wake up lawyers across 3 time zones, "he will learn that he is the one trespassing." The car sped toward New York City. Ellie wasn't just the scorned wife anymore. She was Eleanor Sterling, the sole heiress to a $4 billion fortune she had kept hidden to find true love. She had played the role of the supportive, simple wife perfectly. She had cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, and secretly injected millions into his failing tech startups through anonymous angel investors so his ego wouldn't be bruised. She had built him, and now, piece by piece, she was going to dismantle him. The sun rose over the Hamptons, bathing the wet manicured lawns in a glittering gold light. Inside the master bedroom, Marcus Vance stretched his arms, feeling the high thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets against his skin. He rolled over. Jessica was still asleep, her blonde hair fanned out over the pillow Ellie used to sleep on. Marcus felt a surge of triumph. He had done it. He had shed the dead weight. No more boring dinners, no more lectures about humility, no more Ellie. He was free. He slipped out of bed, put on his silk robe, and walked out onto the balcony. He looked out over his domain, the 10-acre estate, the infinity pool, the tennis courts, the garage housing his Ferraris. All mine, he murmured, sipping the espresso he had made from the machine in the bedroom. He frowned. Usually, by 8 a.m., the house was buzzing with staff. The scent of fresh pastries should be wafting up from the kitchen. The pool boy should be skimming leaves. Whatever. They were probably terrified of him after his shouting match last night. Good. Fear motivated people. Marcus walked downstairs, expecting to find breakfast laid out on the kitchen island. The kitchen was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of things. The counters were bare. The silver fruit bowl was gone. The coffee maker was unplugged. "Hello?" Marcus called out. "Greta, Chef Marco." Silence. He walked into the hallway. The fresh flowers that were usually changed daily were missing. The vase was gone. He walked into the living room. The curtains were drawn. On the center table in the foyer, where he had thrown the keys at Ellie the night before, sat a single white envelope. It wasn't a handwritten note. It was a formal document, thick and heavy. Marcus ripped it open. Inside was a letter on thick, cream-colored stationery, embossed with a logo he didn't recognize. Argos Land Management. He scanned the text, confusing, clouding his mind. "Dear Mr. Vance, pursuant to Section 4, Paragraph B of your ground lease agreement dated September 12th, 2019, we are hereby notifying you of a material breach of contract. The lease for the land situated at 108 Ocean Drive is hereby terminated effective immediately. As per the reversion clause, all improvements, structures and fixtures attached to the land are now the legal property of the lessor. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Failure to comply will result in the removal of trespassers by private security." Sincerely, the legal department, Marcus stared at the paper. Then he burst out laughing. "Scammers," he muttered, crumbling the paper into a ball and throwing it on the floor. "Probably some phishing attempt. Argos Land Management? I own this place." He pulled out his phone to call his lawyer, loud enough to wake Jessica. "Dave!" Marcus shouted into the phone. "I just got some joke letter about a ground lease. Who the hell is Argos Land Management?" There was a long silence on the other end. "Dave, you there?" "Marcus." Dave's voice was shaky. I was just looking into this. I thought you owned the land outright. But I'm looking at the county records right now. You don't. You bought the building rights. The land is held in a blind trust." "What are you talking about?" Marcus felt a cold prickle of sweat on his neck. "I paid $12 million for this property." "You paid $12 million to build the house," Dave corrected. "The land." "Marcus, the land deed is in the name of a holding company. And looking at the bylaws, if you divorce, the lease dissolves." "Fix it!" Marcus screamed, his voice echoing in the empty kitchen. "I don't care what it costs. Sue them. Buy the land. Who owns Argos?" "That's the problem," Dave said. "Argos is a shell. It's owned by a holding company in the Caymans, which is owned by a trust in Delaware. It's a fortress, Marcus. I can't find a human name attached to it." "There is always a name," Marcus roared. "Find it!" He hung up, his hands shaking. He needed a drink. He went to the wine cellar. Locked. He frowned. He punched in the code. Error. He tried again. Error. "What is going on?" he hissed. Jessica walked into the kitchen, wearing one of Marcus's shirts. She looked annoyed. "Babe, the Wi-Fi isn't working. I can't upload my morning story. And where is the chef? I want an avocado toast." "Shut up, Jessica," Marcus snapped, pacing the floor. "Excuse me?" Jessica's eyes went wide. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm not Ellie." "No, you're not," Marcus muttered. Ellie knew how to fix things. The doorbell rang, not the polite chime of a guest, but a long, insistent buzz. Marcus marched to the front door and threw it open. Standing there were two men in dark suits. They weren't police. They looked like private military contractors. Behind them, a tow truck was backing up to the garage. "Can I help you?" Marcus demanded, trying to project authority. "Mr. Vance?" the larger man asked. He checked a clipboard. "We are here to repossess the assets belonging to Vantage Systems and its primary investors." "Repossess?" Marcus laughed incredulously. "I am the CEO of Vantage Systems. I am the investor." "Actually, sir," the man said calmly, "according to a filing made at 6 a.m. this morning, the majority shareholder, the Angel Group, has called in their loans. Since the company lacks the liquidity to pay, they have seized collateral." "What collateral?" "The company vehicles," the man said, pointing to the garage. "And your executive salary accounts have been frozen pending an embezzlement investigation." "Embezzlement?" Marcus screamed. "I built this company." "Sir, please step aside," the man said, signaling the tow truck driver. Marcus watched in horror as the garage doors, which he hadn't opened, began to rise. Someone else was controlling his smart house. "No, that's my Porsche, that's my Ferrari." Marcus ran toward the garage, but the large man stepped in his path, blocking him like a brick wall. "Step back, sir, or we will call the local authorities." Jessica came running out to the porch, her phone in hand, recording. "Oh my God, Marcus, they are taking the cars. Is this a prank? Are we being punked?" "Put the phone away," Marcus swatted at her. "Hey," Jessica yelled, "don't touch me." Marcus stood in the driveway, barefoot, watching as his prized yellow Porsche, the one Jessica had arrived in last night, was hooked up to the tow truck. "This is a mistake," Marcus whispered, his face pale. "This is a massive clerical error. I'm going to sue everyone. I'm going to ruin everyone." But deep down, a terrifying thought began to take root. The land lease, the frozen accounts, the smart house turning against him. It was coordinated. It was precise. It was personal. Who had the power to do this? He thought of Ellie. Quiet, mousy Ellie with her books and her knitting. No, impossible. She was probably crying in a motel room right now. She didn't have the teeth for this. His phone buzzed. A text from Dave, his lawyer. "Marcus, I found the name behind Argos Land Management. You need to sit down." Marcus stared at the screen, his thumbs trembling as he typed back. "Who?" The three dots bubbled for what felt like an eternity. Then a single name appeared. Sterling. Marcus frowned. Sterling? Like the Sterling family, the old money dynasty that owned half of Manhattan? What did they have to do with him? Then, another text from Dave. I looked into Eleanor's maiden name. On our marriage license, she put Eleanor S. Vance. We never asked what the S stood for. The blood drained from Marcus's face so fast he nearly fainted. He dropped the phone on the wet pavement. Eleanor Sterling. He looked up at the mansion, the towering columns, the sprawling wings, the symbol of his power. It wasn't his. It had never been his. He had been living in a dollhouse, and the owner just took the roof off. The realization hit Marcus with the force of a physical blow. He staggered back, leaning against one of the stone pillars of the portico. "Sterling," he whispered. Jessica was still screaming at the tow truck driver, but her voice sounded distant, like it was underwater. Marcus's mind was racing back through 10 years of memories. He remembered meeting Ellie in the university library. She was wearing thrift store clothes. She drove a beat-up Honda. She never talked about family. He had assumed she was ashamed of being poor. God, I was so blind. She wasn't ashamed of poverty. She was hiding from wealth. She was vetting him. She wanted to know if he loved her for her, or for the sterling billions. And for 10 years, he had passed the test. Until yesterday. "Marcus!" Jessica grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Do something! They're taking the Bentley now. My purse is in there." Marcus shoved her off. "Shut up, Jessica. The cars don't matter. The house doesn't matter." "What do you mean the house doesn't matter?" she screeched. "Where are we going to live?" "I don't know," Marcus roared. Suddenly, the large digital screens that lined the driveway, usually used to display art or welcome guests, flickered to life. A video feed appeared. It was Ellie. She wasn't wearing her cardigan. She was wearing a tailored white suit that looked sharp enough to cut glass. Her hair was blown out, sleek and professional. She was sitting in a boardroom that looked like the bridge of a starship, surrounded by people in suits who looked far more important than anyone Marcus had ever met. The audio crackled over the outdoor speakers, booming across the estate. "Good morning, Marcus." Ellie's voice was crisp, magnified, godlike. Jessica stopped screaming. The tow truck drivers paused. Even the birds seemed to go quiet. Marcus stared up at the screen, his mouth open. "Ellie?" "I see you received the eviction notice," Ellie said calmly from the screen. She picked up a fountain pen and twirled it. "I apologize for the abruptness. But as you said last night, life moves fast. You have to keep up or you get left behind." "Ellie, wait," Marcus stammered, stepping toward the screen as if he could plead with the pixels. "Baby, let's talk. This is insane." "You're a sterling. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted a husband, Marcus, not a parasite," Ellie replied. Her eyes on the screen were cold, devoid of the love that had been there for a decade. "I supported you, I loved you, I built you, and you threw me out like trash because you thought you found something shinier." She glanced at Jessica on the screen. Jessica shrank back, suddenly looking very small and cheap in her stolen shirt. "I'm cancelling the IPO for Vantage Systems," Ellie announced casually. "No!" Marcus screamed. "You can't. That's my life's work. The board will never allow it." "I am the board, Marcus," Ellie said. "The angel group that funded your Series B and C rounds. That was me, the silent partner who bailed you out of the crypto crash. That was me. I own 61% of your company, and as of this morning, I have voted to remove the CEO for poor judgment." "You can't do this," Marcus sobbed, falling to his knees in the driveway. "Ellie, please, I'm sorry. I was stressed. It was a mistake. Jessica means nothing to me. She's nobody." "Hey!" Jessica yelled, offended. "It's too late for apologies," Ellie said. She checked her watch. "You have exactly 1 hour before the security codes on the perimeter gates change. Anything left inside the house after that becomes mine. If you are still on the property, you will be arrested for trespassing." "Where am I supposed to go?" Marcus cried. "You froze my accounts." "I believe you have a severance package," Ellie said, her voice dripping with irony. "I left a check for $200,000 in the mailbox. That should be more than enough for a man of your simple tastes." The screen went black. Marcus knelt in the driveway, the silence deafening. 200,000, Jessica repeated, doing the math. She looked at Marcus, then at the mansion, then at the departing tow trucks. She scoffed. "You're broke," she stated flatly. "Jess, baby, we can fix this," Marcus pleaded, reaching for her. "I just need a good lawyer." "You need a miracle," Jessica said, stepping back. "I'm not dating a broke guy with a crazy ex-wife who owns the planet. I'm out." She turned and began walking down the long driveway toward the gate, her heels clicking on the asphalt. "Jessica!" Marcus yelled. "You can't leave me. Not now. Watch me," she called back, not even turning around. Marcus was alone. He looked at the massive house looming over him. It looked different now. It wasn't a castle. It was a fortress, and the drawbridge was closed. He scrambled to his feet. He had 1 hour. He had to get his watches, his cash stash in the safe, the bearer bonds. He ran to the front door and grabbed the handle. Locked. He pounded on the wood. "Open! Open up!" The smart lock pad flashed red. Access denied. He ran to the back door. Locked. The windows, reinforced storm glass. He was locked out. He couldn't even get inside to pack a bag. He remembered Ellie's words. "Take only what you came with." He looked down at himself. He was wearing silk pajamas and a robe. He was barefoot. He had nothing. The rain clouds from the night before began to gather again, blocking out the sun. A rumble of thunder shook the ground. Marcus Vance, the millionaire genius, sat on the steps of the mansion he thought he owned and put his head in his hands. But Ellie wasn't done yet. This was just the demolition. Now, it was time for the renovation. 3 weeks had passed since the storm. Marcus Vance sat on the edge of a sagging mattress in the Starlight Motel, a roadside establishment on the outskirts of Queens that smelled of stale cigarettes and regret. The neon sign outside buzzed incessantly, a flickering reminder of how far he had fallen. He was no longer wearing Armani. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt he had bought from a thrift store and a pair of trousers that were a size too big. His Patek Philippe watch was gone, pawned to pay for the first week at the motel, and a retainer for a lawyer who operated out of a strip mall. "You have to have something," Marcus barked into his prepaid burner phone. "She stole my company. She stole my house." "Mr. Vance, please lower your voice." The lawyer, Barry Slavin, sighed on the other end. Barry was cheap, sweaty, and the only attorney in New York who hadn't hung up the moment they heard the name Sterling. "I've looked into the filings. It's ironclad. The company bylaws gave the majority shareholder the right to dismiss the CEO without cause if the company's valuation dropped. And when the news of your eviction hit the tabloids, Vantage Systems stock plummeted 14%. "Because of her!" Marcus screamed, pacing the small stained carpet. "She manipulated the market." "Proving that is impossible," Barry said. "And the Angel Group, that's her. She essentially fired you from her own company. As for the house, you signed the ground lease, Marcus. I read it. It's a standard reversionary interest clause used by old money families to keep outsiders from claiming their land. You walked right into it." "So I get nothing?" Marcus whispered, his voice trembling with rage. 10 years. I gave her 10 years. "You have the severance check," Barry suggested. 200,000. That's not nothing." Marcus looked at the check sitting on the nightstand. It mocked him. It was an insult, a tip left for a bad waiter. "I don't want the scraps," Marcus shouted. "I want my life back. I want to destroy her, Barry. Find me dirt. The Sterlings must have skeletons. Tax evasion? Illegal offshore accounts? Something." "Marcus, listen to me." Barry's voice dropped. "I got a call this morning from a firm called Pendleton and Associates. They politely informed me that if I continue to harass Eleanor Sterling with frivolous motions, they will file a grievance with the Bar Association and have my license revoked. They knew about my previous infractions." Marcus froze. "So you're quitting?" "I'm trying to stay employed," Barry said. "Good luck, Mr. Vance. Don't call me again." The line went dead. Marcus threw the phone against the wall. It shattered, the plastic casing cracking open. He sat in the silence, his breathing heavy. He was alone. Jessica had blocked his number the moment the credit cards were declined. His friends in the Hamptons, the guys he played golf with, the investors he drank scotch with, had ghosted him. It was as if Marcus Vance had never existed. But he still had one card to play. He remembered something. Years ago, Ellie had a private safe in the guest cottage, the one place on the estate Marcus rarely visited. She kept sentimental things there. He remembered seeing a blue file once. She had closed the safe quickly when he walked in. If she was a Sterling, maybe that file contained the family secrets, the leverage he needed. He couldn't get into the main mansion. It was a fortress now. But the guest cottage? It was on the edge of the property, near the old service road. It had an old-fashioned key lock, not a smart system. Marcus stood up. A dark, desperate plan formed in his mind. He would break in, he would get the file, and he would burn her empire to the ground. He grabbed his coat. He had just enough cash for a train ticket back to the Hamptons. It was time for a homecoming. The night was moonless, offering Marcus the cover he needed. He ditched the taxi a mile from the estate and walked through the woods, his Italian loafers, the last remnant of his old life, sinking into the mud. He reached the perimeter fence. To his surprise, the section near the old oak tree was still damaged from a storm last year. Ellie hadn't fixed it. Careless, he thought with a sneer. He squeezed through the gap, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was on the grounds. His grounds. He crept toward the guest cottage. It was dark. The main mansion, 100 yards away, was ablaze with light. He could see shadows moving in the windows. A party? A meeting? He didn't care. He reached the cottage door. He pulled out a tension wrench and a pick he had bought online. He had spent the last 3 nights watching lock-picking tutorials on YouTube. It took him 10 agonizing minutes, sweat dripping into his eyes. But finally, the lock clicked. He pushed the door open and slipped inside. The cottage smelled of lavender and old paper, Ellie's scent. It made his stomach churn with a mix of nostalgia and hatred. He used his phone flashlight, sweeping the room. There, behind the painting of the lighthouse, was the wall safe. He knew the combination. It was the date they met. 10:04 to 15. His fingers trembled as he punched the numbers. Beep, beep, beep. The light turned green. "Got you," Marcus whispered. He pulled the handle. The heavy steel door swung open. But the safe wasn't full of cash or diamonds. It didn't contain secret offshore bank codes or evidence of crimes. It contained a single thick leather binder. Marcus grabbed it, sitting on the floor to read it under the flashlight beam. He flipped it open. The first page was a document titled Project Vance, Rehabilitation and Support Strategy. Marcus frowned. He turned the page. It was a log, a detailed, dated log of every major success in his career. Entry: March 12, 2018. Marcus is stressed about the payroll for April. He is too proud to ask for a loan. I have instructed Arthur to route $50,000 through the Angel Fund as an anonymous grant for promising tech startups. He thinks he won a contest. His smile tonight was worth every penny. Entry: July 22nd, 2019. The SEC investigation regarding the accounting error could ruin him. It was an honest mistake, but they won't see it that way. I called Uncle Silas at the firm. He made a call to the commissioner. The audit is dropped. Marcus thinks his charming presentation saved him. I let him believe it. Entry: November 5th, 2021. He wants the mansion. It is too big, too ostentatious, but he needs to feel like a king. I have arranged for Argos land to lease the property. If I bought it outright, he would feel small. I will let him put his name on the gate, even if the land is mine. I just want him to be happy. Marcus flipped through the pages faster, his breath hitching. There were hundreds of entries, every lucky break, every sudden investor, every legal miracle. It wasn't his genius, it wasn't his charm, it wasn't his hard work. It was Ellie. She hadn't just built the company financially, she had paved the road in front of him, sweeping away every obstacle before he could even trip over it. She had spent millions, pulled dozens of strings, and used her family's immense power solely to prop up his fragile ego. She had loved him that much. She had built an entire world just for him to rule, content to sit in the shadows and knit just so he could shine, and he had thrown her out in the rain for an influencer who left him over a car. No, Marcus whimpered. The realization was more painful than the poverty. The poverty was just money. This was the destruction of his soul. He wasn't a self-made man. He was a pampered child playing with toys his wife bought him. "It's a compelling read, isn't it?" The voice came from the doorway. Marcus jumped, dropping the binder. Ellie stood there. She wasn't wearing a suit this time. She was wearing a stunning, floor-length emerald gown. She looked like royalty. Flanking her were two large security guards, and Arthur, who looked at Marcus with pure pity. "How long have you been there?" Marcus croaked. "We knew you were here the moment you crossed the fence line," Ellie said, stepping into the room. "Thermal cameras, Marcus. We upgraded the security." You did all this." Marcus pointed at the binder on the floor. "You controlled everything." "I supported everything," Ellie corrected gently. "There is a difference. I wanted you to succeed. I believed in you, Marcus. I believed that under all that insecurity and bluster, there was a good man. I thought if I made you feel safe, if I made you feel powerful, that good man would finally come out." She took a step closer, her eyes sad. "But the more I gave you, the more you wanted, and the less you saw me." "I can change," Marcus pleaded, scrambling to his knees. "Ellie, I see it now. I see what you did. I can be that man. Take me back, please. I'll sign a post-nup. I'll work in the mailroom. Just don't leave me out there with nothing." Ellie looked down at him. For a moment, Marcus saw a flicker of the old Ellie. The one who forgave him when he forgot anniversaries. The one who nursed him when he was sick. Then, she looked at the ring on her finger. A new ring. A family signet ring. "I can't do that, Marcus," she said softly, "because I finally realized something. You didn't love me. You loved the way I made you feel. You loved the reflection of yourself in my eyes. But now, the mirror is broken." She turned to the guards. "Escort Mr. Vance off the property," she ordered. "And call the police. I want to press charges for breaking and entering." "What? No!" Marcus scrambled back. "Ellie, you can't put me in jail. I'm your husband." "Ex-husband," Arthur interjected, stepping forward. "The decree came through this morning. Expedited." "Ellie!" Marcus screamed as the guards grabbed his arms. They hauled him up like a sack of flour. "Wait," Ellie said. The guards paused. Marcus looked at her, hope flaring in his chest. Ellie walked over to the binder on the floor. She picked it up. She looked at it one last time, then tossed it into the lit fireplace. The dry paper caught fire instantly. The record of Marcus's success began to curl and blacken in the flames. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said. She turned and walked out into the night, heading back toward the mansion where a string quartet was playing, leaving Marcus to be dragged into the darkness. 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. It wasn't a divorce hearing this time. It was a criminal trial. State of New York versus Marcus Vance. The charges were severe: embezzlement, corporate fraud, and misappropriation of funds. The forensic audit Ellie had ordered that first night had uncovered everything. In his desperation to keep up his lavish lifestyle during the lean months, Marcus had dipped into the employee pension fund. He had moved money from tax accounts to pay for the Porsche, for the diamonds he bought Jessica, for the trips to St. Bart's. He had thought he could put it back before anyone noticed. But he never did. Marcus stood up as the judge entered. He looked gaunt. His hair was thinning. The public defender beside him looked bored. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked down at Marcus. "Mr. Vance, in light of the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution and your own admission of guilt in the plea deal, I am sentencing you to 5 years in a federal correctional facility, followed by 5 years of probation." The gavel banged. Marcus didn't cry. He was too tired to cry. He just nodded. As the bailiff handcuffed him, he looked toward the back of the courtroom. He half expected to see Ellie there, maybe gloating, maybe crying. But the back benches were empty of Sterlings. Ellie hadn't come. She didn't send a lawyer. She didn't send Arthur. She had completely, utterly moved on. He wasn't worth her time to even watch him fall. That indifference hurt more than any hatred could have. The sun shone brightly over the Hamptons. The Vance Manor was gone. In its place stood the Eleanor Sterling Centre for the Arts. The massive gates were open to the public. The driveway where Marcus had been evicted was now filled with aspiring artists, musicians and writers carrying instruments and portfolios. Ellie stood on the balcony, the same balcony where Marcus used to drink his morning espresso and survey his kingdom. She was holding a cup of tea, watching the students below. She looked peaceful. She looked free. "Miss Sterling?" Ellie turned. It was a young man, perhaps 22, holding a violin case. He looked nervous. "Yes?" She smiled. I just wanted to say thank you," the boy stammered. "My scholarship. I wouldn't be here without it. I heard this place used to belong to some tech billionaire who hated art. I'm glad you changed it." Ellie laughed, a genuine bright sound that carried on the wind. "He didn't own it," Ellie said, looking out at the horizon. "He was just a tenant, and he forgot to pay the rent." She patted the boy on the shoulder. "Go play. Make something beautiful." The boy ran off to join his friends. Ellie lingered on the balcony for a moment longer. She touched the locket around her neck, the only piece of jewelry she had kept from before. She opened it. Inside, the picture of Marcus was gone. In its place was a simple inscription, "To thine own self be true." She snapped it shut, turned her back on the past, and walked inside to build a future that was finally, truly hers. And that is the tragic yet satisfying fall of Marcus Vance. He had a woman who would have given him the world, but his ego convinced him he already owned it. It's a harsh lesson. Never mistake the generosity of a partner for your own power, and never, ever assume you're the smartest person in the room, especially when your name isn't on the deed. What did you think of Ellie's revenge? Was burning the binder of his successes the ultimate power move? Or should she have shown the world he was a fraud? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please blast that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell notification so you never miss a new story. We drop new dramas every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you step on, because they might just own the ground you're standing on.